problem is I mean, this is 6 months into a new government. They've got record levels of unpopularity. They've managed to. Every time I come and talk, I end up swearing, so I mustn't do it. They've managed to irritate, shall we say?
Yes.
Lots of different bits of society. So obviously you've got the farmers going bananas, and rightly so. Then you've got old people going bananas about their winter fuel payments. You've got the waspy women. You've got the employers who are now, far from thinking about expanding their small businesses. They're thinking about actually just, standing still and treading water because their cost of basically employing people is going to go up dramatically in April. You've got, lots of different groups of people are annoyed and they feel kind of lied to. And the problem is for this government is they made such a big song and dance about change and being different, and we're not going to be those evil Tories. We're going to do things differently. We're going to be open and honest and transparent, and we're going to have integrity. And then they come in and end up doing loads of things they said they weren't going to do, actively said they weren't going to do, especially on the farmers, especially on national insurance. They said, the manifesto said, we will not put up national insurance. And you think, well, people are annoyed on twofold. One, don't treat us like mugs.
Yep.
If you were going to do all this stuff, which we kind of knew they were going to do, but they made such a big song and dance about not doing it. So there's a sort of trust issue. And then it's a sort of, well, it's the same old, the front of house staff might have changed, but it's the same show. Like, it's the same. It's the same. And to make such a song and dance about, being different and then actually being, it's just more of the same, isn't it?
I thought it was quite telling today. There was an opinion poll, you would have seen this, Reform UK level pegging with Labour.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, this is a sort of a newish pollster rather than one of the sort of established ones, but we've often seen over the last 10, 15 years that actually some of the sort of plucky start-up pollsters sort of catch a mood more before the sort of, established companies catch up. Look, there's no doubt about it that this government is in trouble. There's no doubt about it that this government has record unpopularity for this early on. Starmer went into government with the lowest popularity ratings of any prime minister. His majority is big, but it's shallow, as in the majorities that he won those seats in are very small. Yeah. You've got Reform coming up the outside lane. You've got the Tories, frankly, still, punch drunk from what happened to them in July, slightly reeling. They've got a new leader, but they're not quite firing on all cylinders. And, last night they could barely muster 100 MPs for a vote. So they can make all the noise they want, but they can't defeat the government. So you've got this sort of incredibly fractured political system now. And, we've seen how fluid voters are in last July. We saw it was ever since Brexit and Boris and COVID, people aren't, wedded to their votes in a way that they were anymore. It's not like 97 where it was a massive, swing. Completely. And, it took 15 years to swing back. People are all over the place. You've got people who've gone on a complete political journey from voting for Labour to voting for Boris to voting for Reform. And, all of this stuff can be, is quite terrible. And I was speaking to one of Keir Starmer's speaking to sort of Downing Street people before Christmas, and they reckon the Prime Minister genuinely thinks there's a 1 in 3 chance, 3 to 1 chance, so 25% chance that Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister. And you just think, if that's what so
the Prime Minister thinks that.
I mean, it's pretty. They think he's going to be up against. He thinks he's going to be up against a right-wing populist force. Yeah. He just doesn't know who it's going to be yet. Either it's going to be Reform, and they keep their act together. They've been pretty good, keeping that the show on the road. Nigel Farage is a different Nigel Farage than we've seen before. He's got his eyes on the prize. They're professionalising the party. Or Reform drag the Tories so far to the right in the next 3 or 4 years, as they've already started to do. Look at some of the things Robert Jenrick's saying on immigration. Look at Kemi backing him on it. Look at Chris Philp on the show today. That actually the old idea of it being, the soft left Labour Party versus the centrist right Tory party is gone. It's gone. And it's going to be a populist right-wing force, either Farage or someone echoing him, versus Labour. And there's a big old chance. There's no reason that Britain is immune to what we're seeing around the world, from Trump to what's about to happen in Canada, what's about to happen in France, what's about to happen in Germany. The public is shifting right. Could it not, and the Labour Party need to keep up with that.
I wonder whether Kemi can run the course on this, and whether a Jenrick character comes in. Then do they merge with Reform? Because if they don't, you've got the split scenario.
Everyone's saying, publicly, both sides are saying publicly, no deal,
no
dice. But give it 3 years,
of course.
We'll start seeing, and I think we'll start to see some voices starting to make that call. But the thing is about Farage, Farage is basically, he's been there. In his view, Boris sort of welched on the deal that they did in 2019, where Farage stood down the Brexit Party troops in Tory-facing seats, gave Boris that massive majority, and Boris gave us, record immigration. So he thinks they didn't keep their part of the deal. So he's very much, if they want to do a deal, it's going to be the Nigel Farage. They can come to me, not the other way around. You've got two big characters there. So I don't know what it will look like, but I'd be amazed if there's not some sort of non-aggression pact.
It's worth just playing another clip here from The Sun's Never Mind the Ballots. You can see it on the TalkTV YouTube page. We alluded to it, Harry just alluded to it, the vote where, they barely got just over 111 MPs.
Yeah, well, that's with the reform and the Northern Irish.
Indeed, voting in favour of a new inquiry into grooming. Was this an inquiry? Was this a request from opposition parties because they really believed in the issue? Were they showboating, or, as Mr Starmer said himself, were they bandwagon jumping? Let's have a listen to Harry talking to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, on this issue.
Which police...
So you want basically, essentially, a show trial?
I want to know who covered this up. I want to know who failed these victims by being negligent, by disbelieving their accounts. I want to see a day of reckoning for those people who did not do their job properly.
That's not an inquiry, though. That's a show trial.
No, it's not a show trial. It's getting to the truth about what happened. It's finding out if there are other towns where this happened that we don't even know about sitting here today.
Again, one of the fair points that Starmer made is worth just very briefly, Harry, we've not got long on the clock, but Chris Philp was part of the last government. He was, I think, police minister.
Various ministers.
Various ministers. None of this was said then.
Well, this is what I tried to say.
It's not unreasonable to raise that.
This is what I've tried to say. So I tried to make this point to him and said, look, when did you actually decide you were into this? Was it when Elon Musk started tweeting about it, or is it a long-held conviction? I mean, they've got a point in the fact that Oldham Council, the Labour-led Oldham Council, have written to the Home Office and been rejected. This is what triggered this whole conversation in the last 10 days, 2 weeks. And that's where but obviously there's a bit of politics in this. There is. But, I mean, I'm of the view there hasn't been a reckoning about the seriousness and the scale of what happened in those northern towns over the course of 2 decades. And actually it might need, friends and allies and neighbours to go, hang on, what on earth? And actually, because the way the story was dripped out, there wasn't ever this moment of national anger. And I think if we can get that, whether that needs another 7-year inquiry and loads of lawyers, coining their, lining their pockets as these things inevitably end up being, they'll say they'll do it in 2 years, it'll take 5, and lots of people in North London and various chambers around the country get very rich. Whether it needs to be that, or whether there just needs to be something where actually all of it is collated together and the true scale and horror of it is actually there to...
Well, I spoke to Richard Tice earlier, and he seemed to think, because obviously Reform have said, Nigel Farage said just this week that Reform will have an inquiry. And when he said that, I thought, blimey, that's going to be news to a lot of your colleagues, because mounting an inquiry is not the work of a moment. But Richard Tice told me that he thinks it can be done. It can be done within sort of a reasonable timescale.
I think what we think is we know what happened. We know what the horrific crimes were. Where I think there is a lack of accountability is who covered it up? The police forces, the councils, the schools, the orphanages. Like, where is this? Who beyond an actual perpetrator of these horrific crimes has ever been brought to task for this? No one. They're probably sitting at home right now on big, fat public sector, gold-plated pensions, hopefully looking over their shoulder.
Or have been promoted elsewhere, which is the usual way it works, isn't it? Yes.